Hey everyone, this is David Brown with the migration update for March 24th, 2023 from the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. Today was partly sunny with a high layer of cirrus clouds, and the winds were light to moderate, mostly out of the west-northwest to northwest, and eventually shifting to a more northerly direction in the afternoon, and it felt a little bit chilly. I had the first Bonaparte's gulls of the season yesterday and had two more this morning that came close enough to get photos. So notice on the Bonaparte's gulls that they have a black dot behind the eye. And also look at the wingtip. It's a different pattern than you see on the ring-billed gulls and herring gulls, where they have a lot more black kind of in these outer primaries. On the Bonaparte's, they have this lighter pattern, and then it's just the very tips of the wings are black, forming this black line. And also, Bonaparte's are quite a bit smaller even than ring-billed gulls. So they're smaller than all of the other gulls that we've been seeing up to this point. And also notice how pointed the wingtips look. You could almost mistake this for a tern. If you follow any of my updates from the Ashland Hawk Watch in Delaware in the fall, you know how much I love airplanes. And there, we're really close to Philadelphia Airport, so we see a lot of planes coming in and leaving from there. Up here in Rochester, not so many, but this Kalitta Charters 727 was pretty cool. This is a model of airplane that you don't see too much anymore. I had the first eastern bluebird of the season in the early morning. Yesterday there was a big influx of song sparrows, and there were still quite a few around the park today as well. So this is sort of our typical stripy sparrow. Here's the side view of it. And from the front, you see they have kind of a thick streaking on the upper breast, and they also have a dot in this area usually. The number of American coots on the bay seems to be increasing. There was a group of about 35 to 40 out there today. Sandhill cranes continue to be seen nearly daily. Here's a group of 3 that we saw in the morning. Here's a juvenile Cooper's hawk. So Cooper's hawks are accipiters, so we notice the long tail. Kind of a flying cross shape, relatively large head, wings held straight, and a little bit streaking on the upper breast, and then a plainer white lower belly area. Here are 2 bald eagles having a disagreement in midair. Here's the same 2 birds, and we can see that they're different ages. The top one is a juvenile, meaning born last year. You can see that even trailing edge to the wing, and the lighter inner primaries. Relatively dark on the underside and head, a lot of white in the wing pit area. Whereas on this other bird, it's an older immature, probably a second year, if I had to guess. Second and third years are usually the ones that have the white bellies like this. Here's another Cooper's hawk showing that classic flying cross shape. Although in this photo, the head doesn't look as big as it sometimes does, but wings held very straight. We can see that more rounded tip to the tail because the outer tail feathers are shorter than the central ones. Here is a full adult bald eagle. And here's a bald eagle that's almost a full adult. You can see that it still has a little bit of white speckling throughout the wings and a little bit of dark still in the tail. Here we have 4 tundra swans, and the most interesting one is this last one here that has a sort of a bent neck. It reminds me of like in a cartoon if a character swallows a shovel or something that's bent, and it would have that shape to the throat. So I don't know if that's an injury or if it's just holding it like that temporarily, but I would assume it's probably an injury. Mid-morning, we had a pretty good flight start to pick up of turkey vultures, like we see here, along with red-tailed hawks and red-shouldered hawks. And some of the other good days we've had recently, the flight has been over towards the lake and somewhat high and distant, but today with these light northwesterly winds, the flight was mostly overhead. We had pretty good views of the birds. They were still fairly high, but I think it was one of the more satisfying days to be on the platform and actually get good looks at red tails and red shoulders. Here is an adult red-tailed hawk. We can see the dark patagial bars here in the shoulder area, and we see the belly band, and we know it's an adult because of the dark trailing edge to the wing and the red tail. Here we have another adult red-tailed hawk showing the same field marks. And also notice that red tails just look big and bulky. Compare that shape to this red-shouldered hawk that just looks a little bit slimmer. Slimmer both in the body and in the wings. And this is an adult red shoulder, so it has that classic orange plumage throughout the underside, combined with black and white in the wings. See the pale crescents near the wingtips, although they don't stand out as much in the glide posture like we see here. And the tail is folded closed since it's gliding. We can see that it's a black tail with thin white bands, like lines on a blackboard. Here we have a juvenile red-tailed hawk. So we can see the dark patagial bars and the belly band, but we notice there's no dark trailing edge to the wing and no red tail. Here we have a light morph rough-legged hawk, and the first thing that should stand out about this is just how it looks kind of splotchy black and white. You have the bold black here in the belly, and here in the wings you have these big dark squares, and at the tip of the tail, but you also have some white areas here in the wings and the base of the tail here and on the head as well. If I had to guess on this bird, I would say this is an adult female, and I would say that because it has a dark trailing edge to the wing and a bold tip to the tail. Although I was reading recently that telling male versus female and aging and sexing rough-legged hawks isn't an exact science, so you have to be a little bit careful. But based on the percentages, this looks like the typical adult female plumage. Looking at this bird, it looks kind of big and bulky. We see dark patagial bars and a belly band. No dark trailing edge to the wing and no red tail. So this is actually a juvenile red-tailed hawk, and you can see it's missing one or more feathers in the left wing. Here's an adult red-shouldered hawk, and on this one you can see those pale crescents near the wingtips a little bit better. And you can also see the tail bands better. Again, it's like white chalk lines on a blackboard. Here's a juvenile bald eagle. So again, we see even trailing edge to the wing, these pale tipped inner primaries, overall dark in the head and underside, starting to molt to a little bit of a lighter color underneath though. Here we have another light morph rough-legged hawk, and this one has sort of the same overall feel in that, again, we see a lot of contrasting areas of dark versus light. But on this bird, we see that it has sort of a dark bib here just under the throat on the upper breast. And it doesn't have that big, bold belly band like we saw in the other one, to say a lot of B's in a row. It's got a little bit of dark on the underside down here on the belly, but not that extensive amount of the other one. We also see it looks like it has multiple tail bands. And we notice that it has a dark trailing edge to the wing. So the dark trailing edge would tell us that it's an adult. And this plumage of having the bib and the multiple tail bands leans it towards being an adult male. Here we have a golden eagle, and we had a pretty nice look at this bird, other than it was towards the sun, so a bit backlit and against a cloudy sky, but much better look at this one than the one that we had the other day. So this was the second golden eagle of the season. As far as the shape of golden eagles, we see that they have somewhat curvy looking wings, especially here where the wings meet the body. They kind of pinch in a little bit. That's something that stands out a bit about the shape compared with bald eagles. And golden eagles also have a small head compared to their tail, and especially as you see them from farther away, that's quite noticeable, where the tail looks 2 or 3 times as long as the head does. And golden eagles get their name because of their golden nape. That's the back of the neck here. So we can see that gold color here in the photo. Here we have the same golden eagle on the bottom in direct comparison with a juvenile bald eagle. So we can see that overall it's actually a very similar shape, right? And we'll look at another photo here in a minute. I think because the bald eagle has its head looking down a little bit, its head looks smaller than it otherwise would. So keep that in mind. Another thing, since this is a juvenile bald eagle, it has those juvenile wing feathers, which are longer than the feathers it would replace those feathers with. So juvenile bald eagles look like their wings are a little more broad than you would see on older, immature, or adult bald eagles. So that's part of the difference in the shape. Here we have a comparison where they were going away from us slightly. And again, the golden eagle is the one on the bottom here. From this angle, I think the shapes look extremely similar. You can still see a little bit of that pinching where the The wing feathers, the wings pinch in as they reach the body on the golden eagle, and that's not as apparent on the bald eagle. But otherwise, to me, the shapes look very similar. And one last comparison where you have more of a direct comparison of the shapes. And I think in this photo, it's a little more apparent that the head on bald eagles sticks out more. It almost looks more balanced with the tail, whereas on golden eagles, the head looks small compared to the longer tail. And again, we see how broad the wings look on the juvenile bald eagle. And one last time, notice that pinching in of the wings close to the body on the golden eagle, whereas you don't really see that on the bald eagle. And the bald might even be missing a feather right here. I think that might be why there's a gap here, but it doesn't really pinch in the same way that you have this kind of curved wing on the golden that pinches in towards the body. And I think that feature also makes the tail look a little exaggeratedly long as well. Here's a nice look at an adult bald eagle against a blue sky. Here we have a killdeer flying over, and notice the double bands. This is still the primary shorebird that we're seeing right now, although a few other shorebirds are also possible to see. But killdeer is the only shorebird we've had so far this season. And the funny thing about this photo is I'm pretty sure I didn't take this. I think what happened was I had walked to my car for a few minutes, and I think this bird flew over and someone took its photo with my camera. The other cool thing about this photo with the sun shining through it is you can see the white pattern that you would normally see only on the top side, but because it's backlit, you can see it all the way across the underside of the wings here. At the end of the day, we could see a black-backed gull way over towards the east spit, and we were trying to figure out if it was a great black-backed gull or a lesser black-backed gull, and we were trying to see the size comparison versus the other gulls around it, but we were trying to figure out were those gulls ring-billed gulls or herring gulls. And I thought I could see yellow legs, but I wasn't 100% sure. So we decided to go over to the east spit and investigate more closely to see which it was. And it turned out to be a lesser black-backed gull. So you can see it's got yellow legs, kind of a medium gray back and wings or mantle, darker than you would see on herring gull and ring-billed gull, but not quite as dark as you would see on great black-backed gull. You can see the difference in color between the pure black wingtips versus the medium gray back. And by this time of year, the lesser black-backed gulls have lost most of the streaking on their head. They're getting more into that breeding plumage look. And their bill isn't as big and thick-looking as you see on the great black-backed gulls. And here's an open wing shot of the same lesser black-backed gull. Looking at the eBird checklist, today I had 63 species. And looking at the HawkCount report for the migrants today, we had 303 turkey vultures, 13 bald eagles, 6 northern harriers, 5 sharp-shinned hawks, 5 Cooper's hawks, 55 red-shouldered hawks, 70 red-tailed hawks, 2 rough-legged hawks, 2 golden eagles, and 1 American kestrel, for a total of 462 migrating raptors. And the second golden eagle was a few hours after the first one, kind of in the mid-afternoon, and it was much more distant and backlit. And I was trying to study it in the scope to confirm the ID, and I didn't have the chance to take any photos, but it was probably too far to get any real photos anyway. There were 3 new species for the season. First one was the eastern bluebird that perched in the tree. Second was a high flyover common loon. And the third was a red-throated loon that we spotted from the east spit when we went over to look at the gull. And that red-throated loon was out on Lake Ontario. And the forecast is not looking too good. So for tomorrow, cloudy and windy with periods of rain, high in the low 50s, at least it'll be somewhat warm. Winds southeast at 20 to 30 miles per hour. Chance of rain 100%, rainfall near half an inch. Winds could gust over 40 miles per hour. So that southeast wind direction can be okay if it's very light, but when it's strong, it's just not good for us because it's a direct headwind for the birds that are migrating past Braddock Bay. So would not expect probably any migration tomorrow just because of the really strong southeasterly winds combined with periods of rain. It looks like the rain is most likely in the morning. So the rain may stop in the afternoon, but in any case, I wouldn't expect there to be much happening. Not even sure if I'll go out to the Hawk Watch at all. For Sunday, it's looking windy again. Cloudy skies will become partly cloudy in the afternoon, high in the mid-40s. Winds west at 20 to 30 miles per hour. So a better wind direction, westerly winds can be fine for us, but 20 to 30 miles per hour is fairly strong, sometimes too strong to get a good flight. They're uncomfortable to hawk watch in because they just bounce you around. So we'll probably either be sheltering behind the platform or just watching from our cars. Hard to predict. It's not the worst day. It looks like there won't be any rain. Looks like maybe a bit of sun in the afternoon. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some migration, some turkey vultures pushing through, maybe some bald eagles, maybe even some red tails. But mostly bigger birds that can handle the stronger winds. So would expect light, maybe moderate migration if we end up with a surprise. Unfortunately, the southwesterly winds from this whole system are happening overnight, Saturday into Sunday. So we miss that period of strong southwest winds. And by Sunday morning, they'll just be out of the west. So, oh well. If the timing of that system shifts slightly, though, and we do get southwesterly winds early Sunday morning, we could get a bit of a flight. And for Monday, it's looking cloudy with a high in the upper 30s, winds north-northeast at 10 to 15 miles per hour. So one of our worst wind directions. It just pushes everything away from the lake shore. So even if anything is migrating, it won't be concentrated over the Hawk platform. Might be a day we have to go over to Frisbee Hill, but overall, wouldn't expect much to be happening on Monday. Well, I was pleasantly surprised at how good today turned out to be, and we had quite a few people come out to the platform in the morning and get to see a lot of hawks. Unfortunately, not so many people for the golden eagles, but there should be plenty more to come. And I don't know when the next day with good winds will be. Looks like the 7-day or 10-day forecast isn't looking so hot, but the next time we have southwesterly winds, we could end up with a really big day, especially for turkey vultures. So keep following the daily updates to see when the next good day to come out to the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch is. From Lyco Birds, this is David Brown. Thanks for watching.